Have you ever felt like the sky is silently speaking to you? Have you woken up in the middle of the night with a feeling in your soul as if something immense was about to happen, but you don't know exactly what it is? You didn't come here today by chance. This message, this word, this truth has found you because there was a seed in your heart that was ready to bloom. Today, we will talk about something that goes beyond politics, the news, or what the media wants to show you. Today, we are going to touch on the mystery, the silence that screams from the top of the Vatican, the departure of Pope Francis, and the echo it has left in the heavens. But before continuing, I ask you something very special. Subscribe to this channel right now if you feel that the Most Holy Mary is calling you in the depths of your heart. Here, together, we form a great spiritual family, a community of prayer, of comfort, of faith. Leave us in the comments which country you are watching us from. We want to hear from you and write your prayer request. For you, for your children, for your grandparents, for your country, for that situation that you cannot carry alone. Maria will read it with you. This channel is not just a digital space. It is an invisible sanctuary where many souls come together every day to pray. And if you have already subscribed and commented, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Because every action of yours, every word, every amen, is a candle lit in the darkness. Now yes, open your heart, because what we are going to reveal may change the way you see the times we live in. The figure of Pope Francis has been a beacon of mercy for many, a pastor who has spoken more with gestures than with words, touching the hearts of the poor, the sick, the marginalized. But behind that tenderness, there was also a pain that few understood, a silent cross that he carried in the midst of criticism, internal divisions, and a world that seems to move further and further away from God. Is it possible that his death is not simply a farewell, but the fulfillment of a prophecy announced decades ago? Could it be that heaven is trying to tell us something urgent through the silence left by his departure? In Fatima, in Garabandal, in Medjugorje, Mary spoke of a time when the church would be shaken, a time where the faithful would have to decide between truth and confusion, between the cross and comfort. That time, is it now? What many do not know is that the warnings did not stop in the 20th century. The Virgin continues to reveal messages through visionaries, priests, and humble souls who have heard her voice in secret. And one of those messages spoke clearly of a profound change that would come to the very heart of the church. The shepherd would be wounded, and the flock would scatter. But this is not a message of fear. It is a call to wake up. It is a bell that resonates from above, not to instill panic, but to ignite faith. Because although the figure of Francisco is no longer among us, the voice of heaven has not been silent. Mary continues to speak to us, continues to guide us, continues to cover us with her mantle. And you, who are listening to this right now, are not alone. She is calling you. He is telling you, my son, my daughter, return to my son. It is a time of prayer, of conversion, of hope. The great changes in the spiritual history of humanity almost never come with bangs. They arrive with silences, with goodbyes, with tears that prepare the soul for a new light. The death of Pope Francis is not the end. It is a threshold. It is the beginning of a new prophetic stage, one where you and I are called to be sentinels of faith, witnesses of truth, and lighted lamps in the middle of the night. Get ready, because what is coming will require firm hearts, purified souls, and a faith that is not broken by the noise of the world. And if this message has already touched something within you, I invite you to stay with me until the end. Because what we will reveal in the next few minutes will not only give you answers, it will give you direction. And above all, it will remind you that you have never been alone. Maria walks with you, and heaven still has a lot to tell you. We live in a time of profound contradictions. While science advances by leaps and bounds and technology connects every corner of the world, hearts seem emptier than ever. The confusion is not only ideological or political, but essentially spiritual. It is as if the soul of the world had entered a dark night where everything sacred is relativized and where the eternal has been replaced by the immediate. This is not a simple period of social change. It is a profound transformation of the human spirit, and in the midst of that fog, Mary's voice rises like a bell, trying to wake up those who can still hear her. Since the beginning of the 20th century, the apparitions of the Virgin have been insistent. Fatima, Garabandal, Medjugorje were not isolated episodes, but connected chapters of a great heavenly warning. Mary does not come with condemnation, but with supplication. It comes like a mother who sees her children playing near the abyss. His words are firm, but wrapped in tenderness. At Fatima, he spoke of a time where faith would be obscured, where Russia would spread its errors, and where many would stray from the path of God. In Garabandal, he said clearly that many cardinals, bishops, and priests would go down the path of perdition, and with them they would drag many souls. In Medjugorje, his messages have been constant. The world is heading towards a great purification. It is in this context that the figure of Pope Francis acquires a prophetic dimension. His death is not simply the end of a pontificate. It is, for many, the visible sign of a deep wound that runs through the Church from within. It is no coincidence that Mary has announced a great spiritual shake-up. She did not speak of natural earthquakes, but of a tremor in the very structure of faith. The Church, as a spiritual house, would be shaken not by external enemies, but by internal forces that have lost their way. And Francisco's departure may mark the visible beginning of that upheaval. The world no longer listens. The voice of God has been silenced by the noise of human arrogance. Prayer has been replaced by opinion. The Eucharist has been replaced by spiritual entertainment. Many seek sensations, but flee from silence. They want blessings, but not crosses. They want miracles, but not sacrifice. In this atmosphere of superficiality, the Pope's death becomes a painful pause, an open wound that forces us to look up and ask ourselves what is really happening. Some will say that these words are exaggerated, that there is no reason to be alarmed, but it's not about panic. It's about waking up. It is necessary to look beyond the headlines and media debates. What is the sky saying? Why has Mary appeared so insistently in the last 100 years? What does it mean that now, in the midst of wars, natural disasters and loss of faith, the pastor has been removed? These questions should not be answered lightly. They require prayer, discernment, and humility. Maria, in her messages, has repeated again and again that time is short, not the end of the world, but the end of an era. A stage where good and evil are no longer disguised, but confront each other openly. A time where each soul will have to choose who to follow. And in the midst of that battle, the Church will be tested like never before, not with physical fire, but with the fire of deception, of disunity, of silent apostasy that invades the altars and hearts. That is why we must understand the spiritual relevance of the present moment. It's not just any moment. We are experiencing what the mystics called the crossing of the veil, where the visible and the invisible touch, where events on earth are a reflection of a war in heaven. And it is there where Mary appears as a guide, like the woman clothed with the sun, fighting the dragon, not with swords, but with humility, prayer, and a constant call to return to her Son. The death of Pope Francis is not simply another page in the history of the Church. It's a calling, an alert, a sign that requires us to return to first love, to the root of our faith. And we cannot ignore it, because when the mother speaks, silence is not an option. When a mother screams for her children, she doesn't do it out of drama, but out of love. And if we listen to his voice now, perhaps we still have time to prepare our hearts for what is coming. Confusion will increase, false prophets will multiply, doctrines will mix with ideologies. But those who stand firm in the truth, Those who listen to the voice of Mary and remain faithful to the gospel will shine like lights in the midst of darkness. There won't be many, but they will be enough, because God never abandons his remnant. And you who are reading these words are not here by accident. Maybe you have felt that restlessness inside that you don't know how to explain. Maybe you have looked at the world and felt that something is not right. That inner voice is the whisper of heaven. That spiritual discomfort is an invitation to go deeper, to pray, to seek the truth beyond the superficial. And that search begins here, with the opening of the heart and the willingness to listen. It is time to look at the signs, to remember the prophecies, to wake up from lethargy. The time for preparation is not tomorrow, it's today. And every earth-shaking event is an opportunity to return to God. The spiritual relevance of this moment is not in what we see, but in what the soul feels. And if you feel that this message is touching you, it is because heaven is speaking to you too. Write in the comments if you feel we are living in a time of spiritual confusion. From which country are you watching us, and who would you like us to pray together for? Francis, the Pope of simple gestures, the one who chose a name that remembered the saint of the poor, was much more than a religious leader. It was, for many, the visible reflection of divine compassion, a human face of the Church that bent down to wash the feet of the forgotten, that embraced the sick, that refused to live in the luxury of the Vatican, preferring to live in simplicity, in common with the humble. His departure does not merely represent the absence of a pontiff, it represents, secondly, the celestial messages, the opening of a different tempo, a time in which Peter's silence will become a fertile field for deceptions that spread subtly, disguised as goodness, progress, and modern spirituality. In the messages revealed by Mary over the decades, in Fatima, Garabandal, Medjugorje, there is a common thread that now, with the death of Francisco, becomes clearer. Mary warned, "The time will come when the Church will walk through a valley of shadows." These words, which for years seemed symbolic, today resonate with another force. The silence of the successor of Peter is more than a historical or ecclesiastical event. It's a sign, a warning, a watershed. Because where there is silence at the top, strange voices will rise from the margins, and many of them will not have the light of truth, but the seduction of confusion. What comes next will not just be a crisis of leadership, but a spiritual battle raging within the hearts of the faithful. Francis's absence will be felt not only in the pulpits, but in souls. Because he was not just a pontiff, but an invisible wall against the wolves that prowled outside. Now, without him, the wall falls, and those who are not spiritually prepared can easily confuse deception with the truth. Evil will not come with the appearance of evil. It will come as an exaggerated good, as distorted empathy, as acceptance without discernment, as doctrine without a cross. This time of spiritual testing will be silent. There will be no thunder or earthquakes at first. There will be subtle confusion, changes in language, adaptations of dogmas, relativistic interpretations of the gospel. And many, wanting to please the world, will begin to move away from the truth. The real danger will be internal, not external. It will not be the bloody persecution that will frighten the faithful, but rather the slow poisoning of faith from within, where everything will seem correct, inclusive, modern, but already soulless. A Christianity without Christ, a church without sacrifice, an altar without reverence. Maria, in her revelations, was always clear about this. The time of purification will not be visible to distracted eyes. It will only be perceived by those who live with their hearts in prayer and discernment, and that time begins with silence, with absence, with the feeling of abandonment. Just like the crucified Christ, when he said, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" Many will feel alone, without direction, lost in the noise of the world. But this is exactly where true faith is tested. when everything around seems dark and yet the heart continues to believe, when the voices around shout doubts but the soul chooses to trust. The Virgin's words were not just consolation, they were map, resistance manual. She warned us not to follow every new speech that appears with the appearance of kindness. She asked us for daily prayer, fasting, frequent confession, and communion with reverence, because only then will we be spiritually shielded against deception. It is not enough to just belong to the church. It is necessary to be rooted in the rock, in the living Christ, in the pure gospel, in the truth that does not change with the winds of culture. And for that, the preparation starts now. With Francisco's departure, we began to cross this announced valley. The signs are everywhere: internal divisions, scandals, doctrinal confusion, spiritual coldness. The Holy Spirit still guides the church, but many no longer want to listen to him. They prefer the applause of the world, the logic of human reason, passing ideologies, but the prophecy is clear. What is coming will not be endured by those who have weak faith. And this is the time to strengthen your knees, to return to the rosary, the word, the Eucharist, to prepare not only with knowledge, but with holiness. This moment is decisive. It is not for despair, but for vigilance. It is not for paralysis, but for spiritual action. Those who are attentive will see that God's plan does not fail, that everything is being allowed with purpose, that Peter's silence is not abandonment, but a call for each believer to assume their own faith with maturity. May each one become light where the pasture has darkened, and that the church, even if wounded, is indestructible because it belongs to Christ. But the purification is real, and it has begun. Now tell me in the comments, what do you think about the silence left by Francisco's absence? Do you think it is the beginning of a prophetic time? We want to read you. This is the moment in which the earth seems to stop for a brief sigh, in which the soul begins to awaken, in which the senses open beyond the visible. It is in this sacred silence where the Mother calls us urgently, not with empty words, not with easy promises, but with the strength of a voice that comes from heaven and pierces the hearts that still know how to listen. This is not just another message, it's not just another warning, it is a direct, personal, urgent call. A call to return to the center, to the heart, to the truth of God. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe. Let the noise of the world fade away. Feel the presence of Mary. Feel its tenderness, its firmness, its light enveloping you like an invisible mantle that protects, that guides, that strengthens. There is a silent cry that runs through humanity. They are souls searching for meaning, broken families, lost youth, injured children, abandoned elderly. And in the midst of that pain, a maternal voice rises clearly. Return to my son, return to love, return to prayer. Mary does not come with accusations, but with compassion. He does not point harshly, but with tears of hope. She knows your falls, your doubts, your dark nights, but he also knows of the fire that still burns inside you, even if it is weak, almost flameless. Therefore, do not wait any longer. He asks us for something concrete: conversion. And conversion is not just about leaving a sin, it is turning your face to God. It is changing course, breaking the chains, opening the soul to grace. It is crying sincerely, yes, but it is also standing up decisively. Conversion is the key that opens the door to spiritual refuge in times of storm. Mary also asks us for prayer, but not just any prayer. The Rosary asks us, because the Rosary is not an empty repetition, it is a deep meditation. It is a heartbeat united to the heartbeat of God. Each Hail Mary is like a drop of light that falls on the world, like a shield that rises against darkness. Whoever prays the Rosary is not alone. He is united to her, and through her to Christ. In times of spiritual warfare, the Rosary is the most powerful weapon. It is the chain of light that connects the earth with the sky. It is the voice of the humble that touches the heart of the Most High, and he also asks us to fast, not as punishment, but as purification. Fasting frees the soul from the weight of the flesh, awaken the mind, strengthen the will. It makes us sensitive to the spiritual. Fasting, lived with love, breaks invisible chains. It makes us solidarity with those who suffer. It helps us to offer, to repair, to heal. Mary teaches us that fasting is not just stopping eating. It is also to stop judging, stop gossiping, stop hating. It is emptying the heart of the world to fill it with God. Each sacrifice, no matter how small, becomes an offering of love that she tenderly collects and presents to her Son. She does not leave us alone on this path. He tells us, "Times will be difficult, but do not fear. I will be with you." It is not an empty promise. It is a guarantee from heaven. History proves it. In every crisis, in every darkness, the Virgin has been present. In Fatima, in Lourdes, in Guadalupe, in Medjugorje. It has always been there, in silence, in tears, in consolation. And now, more than ever, his presence is urgent, because the enemy has let loose, because souls are at stake, because time is short. This call is not for tomorrow. It's for today. It's not for the perfect. It is for those who still fight. It is not for the strong. It is for those who feel weak but trust. Mary does not look for crowds. She looks for sincere hearts. He does not expect great acts. He expects concrete steps. A rosary prayed with faith. A day of fasting offered with love. A confession made with humility. A forgiveness given with tears. A Eucharist lived with reverence. All of this, although it may seem little, transforms the world. Because it is in the small where God is glorified. Now, as you read these words, feel that whisper in your soul. It's not imagination, it is the Spirit. It is Mary knocking on the door of your heart. Don't leave her waiting. Reply. Kneel if you can. Put your hands together. And pray with us. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. This is a spiritual battle, not against flesh and blood, but against the forces of evil that want to steal hope. But with Mary, we do not fear. With Maria, we move forward. With Mary, we win. This is the moment. This is the day. The Mother calls you. Are you ready to answer? Write in the comments from which country you are accompanying us and what prayer intention you carry in your heart today. Since ancient times, heaven has used multiple ways to warn humanity. Throughout the centuries, prophets were the voices that broke the silence, sent to awaken a sleeping people. Today, those voices have not been silent. They have been transformed into visions, dreams, supernatural messages that reach simple people in all parts of the world. Ordinary men and women are dreaming of catastrophes, seeing churches in ruins, hearing words they do not understand in ancient languages. Is this not already a sign? Isn't this a new way God is calling us? While the world runs after progress, fame and consumption, divine warnings continue to fall like raindrops on the conscience of modern man. But most don't listen. Others mock. And some, very few, prepare. When a warning is repeated so many times and in so many ways, it is no longer a coincidence. It's a calling, an urgent one that admits no more waiting. For decades, seers from different nations have received messages related to the purification of the world, messages that speak of a great spiritual deception that will involve even the chosen ones, messages that warn about an internal and external darkness that will expand when the lighthouse of the Church, the successor of Peter, goes out. In the midst of all this, the figure of Pope Francis becomes a key point. Not because of his person, but because of what he symbolizes. The shepherd, the guardian, the bridge. His death, according to certain revelations, will not just be a news event. It will be an open crack in the spiritual world, a door that will let in confusion, doubts, and perhaps a new kind of persecution. But the most alarming thing will not be what is visible. It will be the invisible, the silence of heaven in the face of the indifference of the earth. Many think that the death of a pope is simply part of the natural cycle of the Church. But the Marian revelations, especially those given in places like Garabandal, Fatima and Medjugorje, point to a pattern. Whenever humanity turns away from God, heaven intervenes in a clear and direct way, sometimes with warnings, others with evidence, and in some cases with forceful facts that shake religious, social and political structures. This time, the pieces seem to align again. Francis' death could coincide with a series of events that are already manifesting: escalating wars, unusual earthquakes, unexplained natural phenomena, and a spiritual void growing in the hearts of millions. The Virgin Mary has told us that the heart of man has grown cold, that many pray with their lips but not with their soul, that the time of the test is approaching, and it all begins with a break in unity. This possible break is not only doctrinal or theological, it is spiritual. It is a crack in the confidence, in the hope, in the faith of many. One sector will seek to cling to tradition, another will try to adapt to the world. And in the midst of that division, voices will arise that confuse, ideas that will seem divine but will be false, leaders who will dress in light but act like wolves. That is why the prophetic warning is not simply an announcement. It is a cry for the soul to awaken, so that the conscience is cleansed, so that the heart turns to God before it is too late. It is no longer enough to pray from time to time. It is no longer enough to attend Mass out of habit. It is no longer enough to be half good. Time demands spiritual radicality, because the battle that is coming is not visible, but it will be devastating for those who do not stand firm. The most worrying thing about this warning is that many still see it as an exaggeration. They say, "This has been said before. God is love, he will not punish. The world has always had wars and pestilences." But they ignore something essential. Judgment is not just fire from heaven. Judgment can be God's silence before our cries. It may be confusion that is not clarified. It may be the absence of meaning, the paralysis of the soul, the emptying of the temple. When guidance disappears, chaos takes its place. When the shepherd falls, the flock scatters. That is why the figure of the Pope has such a strong weight in this final stage, because it represents unity, represents the compass. And when that compass disappears, many will feel lost in a starless spiritual night. It is no coincidence that heavenly messages emphasize preparation so much. It's not because they want to scare us. It's because they love us. Now, what can we do about this warning? Wait passively? Panic? Distrust everything? No. What is expected of us is discernment, deep prayer, real conversion. Heaven does not call us to suffer, but to resist. He does not call us to fear, but to trust. But that trust cannot be blind. It must be illuminated by authentic faith. A faith that is nourished by the Word, the sacraments, and sincere love for one's neighbor. A faith that does not seek the spectacle of the supernatural, but kneels in the silence of the soul, because it is there, in that silence, where God speaks. And it is in that silence where the greatest of battles are also fought. In short, the prophetic warning that is manifested today through signs, dreams, and especially with the possible death of the Pope, is not something to be ignored. It is a call to look beyond the immediate, to stop living on the surface, to understand that what is coming is not simply an institutional change, but a global spiritual transformation, a decisive moment for humanity. A bifurcation where some will follow the path of light, and others will fall into the seduction of error. It all depends on how we respond now, because the time we have is sacred, and it's ending. And what do you think about these warnings? Do you think we are spiritually prepared for what is coming? Write in the comments from which country you are accompanying us, and what is your greatest prayer in this prophetic moment. In the midst of confusion, when the human soul seems to reel from the losses, fear, and shadows of the present, there is a light that does not go out. That light does not come from the powerful of the world, nor from empty promises, nor even from human structures that collapse under the pressure of chaos. That light is born from above, from the merciful heart of God, and is projected through Mary, the mother who does not abandon her children. Over the centuries, his presence has been manifested in different places, but his message is the same. Return to his Son, trust in the promise, not let yourself be overcome by hopelessness. The death of Pope Francis cannot be seen as a simple historical episode. It's not just the end of one man's pontificate. It is a sign, a mark in time that calls humanity to a profound review. Francisco was a figure who sparked love, controversy, hope, and resistance. But above all, he was a faithful servant who carried the cross of a divided and confused world. He fulfilled his mission. He sowed what he had to sow. And even in the pain of departure, his life points towards something greater, a new stage in the divine plan, an awakening of consciousness that goes beyond the visible. It is in this stage after her departure that Maria takes on an even more visible, closer, more urgent role. Like a mother who never tires, she continues to guide those who have ears to hear. It does not come to replace the message of Christ, but to remember it with tenderness, with tears of compassion, with warnings clothed in love. Maria has never been a passive figure. In each appearance of his, from Guadeloupe to Medjugorje, the message is clear. The world has moved away, but there is still time. There is still room for return. There is still hope. Many wonder why God allows so much suffering, so much confusion, so much pain in the church and in the world. And the answer does not always come intellectually. Sometimes the only way to understand it is to walk in faith. Because it is in faith where the grain falls to the ground and dies, and then bears much fruit. Suffering purifies, awakens, uninstalls, and pushes the soul towards a deeper search. It's not punishment, it's a calling, an invitation to total abandonment in the hands of the Father. And who better than Mary to teach us that abandonment, she who held the lifeless body of her Son in her arms and did not stop believing. The current time requires spiritual courage. Religious formulas are no longer enough. It is not enough to know prayers by heart or attend events out of habit. What is needed is an awakening of the heart, a faith that becomes a shield, protection against the lies of the world, against the attacks of the enemy, against demoralization, a faith that is not based on what it sees, but on what it hopes. That faith that Mary has cultivated in so many hearts, willing to listen to her in silence. She keeps saying, "Don't be afraid, I'm with you. You are not alone." And those words are not poetry. They are eternal truth. In the midst of pain, there is also a rebirth. Many souls are beginning to see with different eyes, to understand that this world passes away, that human promises fail, but that the word of God remains. And in that word, we find that everything that dies in him flourishes. Everything that is given returns multiplied. Everything that is suffered with love becomes a seed of eternity. Maria is preparing her children for new times, not necessarily easier, but more truthful. She does not come to eliminate pain, but to teach us to live it with purpose. The little ones will be great. Those who have been humbled will be lifted up. Those who cry today will be comforted. That's the promise. And in the silence of prayer, that promise becomes palpable, because when we pray, we don't just talk to God, we also transform. In prayer, we find the strength that the world cannot give us. And that is why Mary insists so much that we pray. Not to fulfill a duty, but to find daily sustenance. Prayer is the food of the soul, the medicine of the spirit, the light in the middle of the night. Without it, we become weak. With it, we move forward even if it is in the dark. It doesn't matter how much was lost. It doesn't matter how much you have failed. It doesn't matter how broken your life is. Maria looks at you tenderly, And from that love, it invites you to get up, because there is always a new beginning. There is always a dawn after night. It doesn't matter how long the darkness has been, the light returns, and with it, the possibility of starting again. This is the message of hope that the Mother wants to leave in your heart today. It is not an illusion. It is a certainty, a promise that comes from above, a hope that does not disappoint. And now, we want to hear from you. From which country are you seeing this message? Who do you need to pray for today? Write your request and your place of origin in the comments. Thus, we will unite our voices as one great spiritual family, guided by Mary into a new light. We live in a time where division seems to be the norm. Hearts grow cold, families are separated by ideologies, and many souls feel alone even when surrounded by crowds. In the middle of that emotional and spiritual desert, this channel is born as an oasis, a space where people not only come to hear words, but to feel the presence of something much bigger. Borders, accents, or local customs do not matter here. What matters is the deep desire to belong, to believe, to raise a prayer to heaven knowing that you are not doing it alone, but with thousands of brothers and sisters around the world. In every message shared, there is a spark of comfort. Every word that comes to your screen has been designed not only to inform, but to inspire, uplift, heal. Because this channel is not just a digital platform. It is a spiritual refuge. It is like a chapel without walls, a church without doors, an altar lit in the midst of the noise of the modern world. There are no judgments or demands here. All that is required is an open heart, willing to listen and let itself be touched by the grace of God through the intercession of the Virgin Mary. The community that forms here is not measured by numbers, but by real connection. For the names that appear in the comments, for the intentions that are written with tears or with hope, for the testimonies of people who found a hug here in the midst of their pain. It is this invisible network of faith that keeps the flame burning. It doesn't matter if you are in a small town or a big city, whether you are at home, in a hospital, at work, or in the solitude of a room. When you join this channel, you are no longer alone. Unity in faith has a power that transcends the human. Mary, as a spiritual mother, has always wanted to reunite her children. Since his appearances in Fatima, Medjugorje, Garabandal, and so many other places, the call has been one. Convert, pray together, remain firm, and this channel answers that call. Here you pray, you listen, you share. Not only do we talk about prophecies, we live hope. Not only are difficult times announced, bridges of love are built to cross them. Each video is a torch. Each prayer is one more thread in this fabric of light that resists the darkness of the world. And you, by being here, are also part of this network. A network that does not break because it is made of faith, of dedication, of deep desire for communion with the divine. The unity that is formed here is not superficial. It is a communion of souls, an echo of heaven that resonates in every corner of the earth, connecting those who still believe, those who still hope, those who know that God's love never fails. The people who come here often come injured. Some have lost loved ones, others have lost hope, and others simply don't know where to turn. But when they hear a word of faith, when they read a comment that reminds them that someone is praying for them, something sparks. And that is what we build together here, a place where the fire of faith does not go out, where prayer is constant, where the spirit is renewed. There is an unstoppable force when hearts align in the same direction, when thousands of people in different time zones stop, close their eyes and say a prayer. Something happens in heaven, because community prayer has a power that breaks chains, that heals diseases, that lifts up the fallen. Maria knows this. That is why her call has always been to unite us, not to remain isolated, not to give up, because united in prayer, we are stronger. This channel is just the beginning. It is the meeting point, the beginning of the path. But what truly matters is what is generated in the hearts of those who accompany us. A spiritual awakening, a return to true love, a decision to change one's life. And that is not achieved with a screen, but with the living presence of the Holy Spirit acting in our midst. Every prayer spoken out loud, every tear shed silently, is a seed sown into eternity. Therefore, when Mary calls us to unite, she does not do so out of custom or tradition. He does it because he knows that in this unity is the key to resisting what is coming, to get through the storms, to not lose faith in the midst of trials. This community is a sign that there is still hope, that there is still light, and that light multiplies when we share, when we support, when we believe together. Now more than ever, this community of faith is needed, of men and women who are not afraid to proclaim their love for God, of humble hearts that let themselves be guided by Mary, of souls willing to love, to forgive, to serve, even in the midst of chaos. Because when one falls, another picks him up. And when one prays, all are strengthened. This is how the kingdom is built. This is how the flame is kept alive. Write in the comments from which country you are joining us and leave your prayer intention. Mary wants to unite her children in a single prayer, in a single voice. Throughout the centuries, messages from heaven have been shining beacons in the midst of the darkest nights. Mary's words, soft as a whisper but firm as a rock, have touched countless hearts, calling them to faith, to conversion, to hope. This channel is born from that same spirit, to be a space where the soul finds comfort, direction, peace, and a reason to continue walking. It's no coincidence that you're here now. Every word you read, every thought that arose in your mind, every beat of your heart that accelerated at some point in this message are part of a larger design. Heaven has mysterious ways of speaking to us, and perhaps this has been one of those moments where light filters through your personal shadows. There are days when we feel like we are walking alone, as if the world is spinning indifferent to our struggles, our fears, our silent tears. But when the right message arrives at the right moment, we understand that someone sees us, that someone listens to us. That is the mission of this space, that you know that you are not alone, that you are not alone, that there is a community of faith that prays with you, that supports you with words and spirit, even if you are thousands of miles away. When you decide to stay, when you like, when you subscribe, you are doing much more than interacting with a video. You are responding to an invisible calling. You are joining your voice to a chain of prayer that extends from the most humble corners to the most distant corners of the planet. Every action is an echo of hope, a reflection of your inner light that not only illuminates you, but also those around you. Faith is cultivated with small gestures. Sharing this message with someone may seem like a simple act, but in that person's soul, it can represent a new beginning. A video like this, seen at the right time, has saved lives. He has healed broken hearts. It has restored joy to those who had already lost all hope. Never underestimate the power there is in a click, in a shared word, in a prayer prayed from the depths of the heart. Mary, the mother who never abandons, wants her children to join, not in the name of an ideology, nor out of interest, but out of love. That love that transforms everything, that renews everything, that forgives everything. When you comment, "Mary, guide us with your love," you are stating more than just a phrase. You are affirming your desire to walk with her, to trust her guidance, to allow yourself to be shaped by her tenderness. Many of those who come to this channel come hurt, tired, confused, but they find here a space where their pain is welcomed without judgment, where their questions are not ignored, where their search has meaning. This is fertile land for the soul. Each video, each reflection, each prayer is a seed that, if it falls on good soil, will bear fruit in due time. And you, by actively participating, are part of that silent miracle that repeats itself day after day. The world is full of noise, distractions, anxieties. But you can create a refuge in the midst of chaos. You can keep this channel growing as a spiritual beacon for thousands of people. All you need is a willing heart, a living faith, and concrete action. Your gesture can light a spark of hope in someone who no longer had the strength to continue. It can make a mother pray for her child. May a young man be reconciled with God. May an old man find peace in his last days. Subscribing is not just following a channel, it is committing to a mission. That is to say, I am here, I believe, I want to walk with you. Liking is not just a sign of approval. That is to say, this message is worth it. I want others to see it. Sharing is not just forwarding content. That is, I know someone who needs to hear this today. And commenting is opening your heart. It's leaving a mark. It is sowing hope. Every day we receive messages from people who, thanks to you, found this space. Stories of transformation, of consolation, of renewed faith. And all of that begins with a decision. Yours. Therefore, if this message has touched your heart in some way, if you felt that it was not by chance, if there was a moment when your eyes filled with tears or your soul felt embraced, we ask you not to keep this treasure just for yourself. Like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Share this message with someone you love, with someone you know is struggling, who needs a word of light. And he comments, Mary, guide us with your love. You can't imagine how many people need to read that today. You can't imagine the good that can come from your yes. Now, tell us in the comments, from which country are you joining us and who do you want us to pray for today? In the midst of the uncertain days we live in, when many souls feel abandoned and hearts are oppressed by the anguish of the world, a refuge is urgent. A refuge that is not physical, but spiritual. A place that is not found on a map, but deep in the soul. That place opens when prayer becomes a bridge between pain and hope, between human cry and divine consolation. It is precisely in this context where the need arises to share something more than words, something more than a message. A spiritual resource that can guide, strengthen, and lift those who feel on the brink of the abyss. For this reason, we have carefully prepared a free ebook titled The Powerful Prayer of the Virgin Mary. This is not a simple devotional text. It is a guide, a torch lit in the middle of the spiritual night, an invitation to discover the power hidden in the simplicity of a prayer spoken with faith. Because praying is not repeating words. It is lifting the heart. It is opening a wound to heaven so that grace can enter through it. It is letting Mary, as mother, take our trembling hands and teach us to walk even when the path seems to have disappeared. Many have forgotten that the Virgin is not a distant or decorative figure of faith. She is an intercessor, companion, refuge. In each of his appearances, from Lourdes to Fatima, from Garabandal to Medjugorje, his message has been clear. Pray, trust, return to God. But how do you pray when the words don't come? How do you persevere when your mind is saturated with worries? How do you pray the rosary when the heart is dry? This ebook seeks to answer those questions with tenderness and clarity, not with complex theories, but with the language of the soul that needs comfort. In its pages, you will find special prayers dictated in moments of spiritual urgency, litanies that strengthen the spirit, and meditations that invite you to immerse yourself in the mystery of Mary's maternal love. You'll also find practical teachings for integrating prayer into your daily routine, even in the midst of chaos, because it is not about having time, but about being hungry for God. And that hunger can only be satisfied by the one who knows the deepest part of the human being. This resource has been shared with thousands of people in different parts of the world, and the testimonies do not stop coming. People who prayed again after years of silence. Mothers who found peace while praying for their children. Young people who discovered that the Virgin is not a symbol of the past, but an ally in the present, and old people who, at the edge of the end of their path, found hope in the promises of a mother who never abandons. Francis left, and with his departure a void was left in the hearts of many believers. But the sky is not silent, and Mary continues speaking, whispering to attentive hearts. This e-book is an echo of that voice. It is a reminder that we are not alone, that prayer remains the most powerful weapon against hopelessness. While the world is torn between confusion and fear, heaven offers us this tool to resist, to hope, to love. If you feel that your faith has cooled, if your prayers no longer have strength, if you are tired of asking and not receiving, this e-book is for you. It is not a miracle printed on digital sheets. It is a spark of light that can light a new fire in your spiritual life. It is enough to open it with humility, read it with your heart, and let the Virgin do the rest. She knows how to act when we can't take it anymore. She knows how to touch where it hurts the most. She knows how to guide when we are lost. The link is posted in the comments. Download it at no cost. Carry it on your phone. Print it if you can. Share it with someone who is struggling. But don't forget it. Use it. Pray with him. Cry with him if necessary. Because every word it contains was written with the intention of embracing your soul. And when Maria hugs, everything changes. This resource is not just a spiritual gift, it's an open door, an invitation to return to the essentials, to reconnect with the voice that calls from within and from heaven, to remember that the Virgin Mary has not abandoned her children, who continues to intercede, guide, protect. Now we want to know something about you. Have you already downloaded the e-book? Which prayer touched your heart the most? Do you have a special intention that you would like us to pray with you? Write in the comments from which country you are joining us and leave your prayer request. We want to read your story. We want to pray with you. We want to walk together. In the midst of the noises of the world, in the midst of the storms of the soul, there is something that many cannot understand. The silence of God is not oblivion. It is not abandonment. It is a language. It is a sacred space where faith is tested, where the soul is purified, and where the heart is invited to trust beyond what it sees, beyond what it feels. The silence of God is, many times, the deepest cry from heaven, asking us to return to what is essential, to prayer, to surrender, to listening. When everything seems paused, when the words from heaven seem to have ceased, that is when the mother speaks. Because when the shepherd is silent, the mother speaks. God, in his infinite wisdom, allows the soul to cross deserts, not because he enjoys human suffering, but because he knows that the dryness of the desert is where we learn to value water. Silence is where the noises of the world lose power. In the apparent divine absence, Mary appears like a star in the night, guiding the steps of those who do not give up. In this time of uncertainty, when altars seem empty and hearts cold, Mary continues to visit, not with thunder or with spectacle, but with tenderness, with whispers that only the attentive can hear. She does not come to replace God. It comes to prepare us to listen to it again. He comes to light lamps that fear extinguished. He comes to console those who feel that faith is slipping like water through their fingers. God's silence is a pause before a new beginning, a dawn that has not yet been seen, but that is sensed in Mary's fidelity. She reminds us that waiting is not wasted time, but rather time of grace, that not everything that is silent has died, that the seed grows in secret, and that true faith blooms in the dark days. Many may wonder, where is God in the middle of all this? And the answer is not in a shout, but in a whisper. It is in Mary, in his constant presence, in their shared tears, in her firmness as a mother who does not abandon her children. Listening to Mary in these times is like tuning the ear of the soul. It is rediscovering the voice of God in the details, in the silence of an empty church, in the cry of a sick person, in the trembling prayer of a grandmother. Mary becomes an echo of heaven, a guide in the midst of confusion, a consolation when everything seems lost. And you, Have you heard that whisper? Have you felt that call in your heart? You may be in the middle of a long night, but even on the coldest nights, a mother watches over her children, and that mother is Mary. She knows anguish. He lived the silence of God when his son died on the cross. He felt the weight of the loss, the uncertainty of Holy Saturday, the painful weight. But he didn't give up, and for that reason now it teaches us not to give up, not to despair. Don't confuse silence with abandonment. The flock is scattered, it's true. There is confusion, there is division, there are open wounds in the church and in hearts. But it is not lost. As long as there is a soul that prays, as long as there is a heart lit by faith, the light will continue to live. And Mary is here, gathering the dispersed, calling the far away, supporting the weary. Not with speeches, but with presence, with faithful love, with hope that it does not run out. Listening to the silence of God is a school of humility. It is learning that not everything is resolved with immediate answers, that there are mysteries that can only be understood through faith. Today, more than ever, it is time to listen, to tune the soul, to capture what the eyes do not see. Maria is talking. Maybe not as you expected, maybe not in a big appearance, but yes, inside your heart. In that restlessness that does not go away, in that desire to return to the sacred, in that impulse that brought you here to read these words. Because nothing is a coincidence. If you are here, it is because the Mother is calling you. And his call is clear. Prepare your heart, ignite your faith, gather yours, and above all, listen. Not the noise of the world, but the sacred silence in which God whispers through his Mother. Perhaps what we now call divine absence is, in reality, a space for the soul to find itself, so that in that apparent emptiness, a deeper faith may emerge, a faith that does not depend on signs, but on trust, a faith that does not demand miracles, but walks even without seeing. And Mary is the best teacher in that school of silent faith, she who kept everything in her heart, she who did not need to understand everything to say yes, she who remained next to the cross when everyone had fled. This is a time to return to it, to let us embrace his tenderness, to learn to wait with hope, and to discover that in silence, God is more present than we imagine, that the light has not gone out. He's just waiting for burning hearts, hearts that, like his, say, "Let it be done to me according to your word." Tell me in the comments, are you hearing that whisper in your heart? What do you think Maria wants to tell you today? There are moments in history where God's silence reverberates louder than any human cry. It is not a silence of abandonment, but of waiting. A silence that does not mean absence, but rather a mysterious preparation for something that our eyes cannot yet understand. Just as the Master was silent before Pilate, so also heaven seems to have kept a profound silence in these times. But that silence is not empty. It is full of purpose. It is full of signs for those who know how to listen with their hearts. The departure of Pope Francis has left us facing that silence. The bells ring, the altars are covered in black, and the prayers resonate in all languages. But beyond the rituals, there is a sacred pause that runs through the soul of the Church. It is as if heaven has suspended time for a moment to let humanity look within itself, so that the flock, in the absence of the visible shepherd, turns its eyes to the eternal shepherd. It is not the first time that humanity has experienced a moment like this. On the cross, when Jesus exclaimed, "My God, why have you abandoned me?" many thought it was all over, but that cry of apparent defeat hid the greatest victory ever achieved. The sky seemed to have fallen silent, but in reality, it was conquering in silence. And today, we too, faced with uncertainty and confusion, must understand that God's silence is an act of love that invites us to trust beyond what is visible. And in the midst of that silence, there is a voice that continues to speak, not through thunder or earthquakes, but through the tender whisper of a mother. Maria hasn't stopped talking. His messages, although ignored by many, continue to be the compass for those who do not want to get lost. She does not impose, she does not force, she does not demand. Just point the way, and that path is his Son. The great spiritual events of history never come accompanied by multitudes who understand them instantly. There is always confusion, there is always skepticism, there is always rejection. But for those whose eyes are opened by faith, the soul begins to grasp what the headlines do not announce, what the powerful hide, what the world despises. And that discernment is a gift that is born from prayer, interior silence, and docility to Mary. Many wonder, where is God in the midst of so much chaos? Why don't you intervene? Why don't you stop the war, the hatred, the corruption? But these questions reveal our human impatience. We want a God who acts according to our times. Let him respond according to our logic. Let it manifest with the speed of a click. However, God works in perfect timing, and many times his intervention begins when the soul empties itself and gives itself without reservation. Maria knows it. Therefore she does not come to promise ease, but to prepare warriors of light. It comes to form strong, humble, available hearts. It comes to awaken in each of us the call to sacrifice, to fidelity, to purity. Because only in this way can you resist the great test. Only in this way can you cross the valley of darkness without losing hope. The silence that we now feel after the death of the Pope is, in reality, a school, a spiritual training to learn to see without seeing, to hear without hearing, to trust when everything seems lost. And as the world shakes, as confusion grows, the eyes of heaven are on those who decide to stand firm, even if the earth trembles. We may never have all the answers. Maybe the mystery will accompany us until the end. But if we learn to walk hand in hand with Mary, we will not get lost. She knows where to take us. She knows how to guide us, even when our steps become uncertain. Her mantle covers those who sincerely seek her, and her light shines on the darkest nights. In this new time that is opening before us, Mary's role becomes even more central, no longer as a distant figure of traditional devotion, but as a living voice, as an urgent sign, as a reliable guide in the midst of confusion. She doesn't want worship. He wants converted hearts. He wants us to return to his Son, to rediscover the beauty of the gospel, to live with an awakened soul. And now that many feel afraid, that others mock, that some take refuge in the noise, she continues to speak softly, so that only those who are willing to be silent inside can hear. It's a different language. It is not for the impatient. It is for those who have understood that salvation does not come from the systems of the world, but from heaven. It is a time of reflection, of deep listening, of prayer from the depths of the soul. Time to discern the signs, to trust the promises, to embrace the cross. Because what heaven is building in this silence will be bigger than anything we can imagine. And you, if you have come this far, you are already part of that awakening. Tell us in the comments what you felt when reading this message. Do you also feel that heaven is speaking to you in the midst of silence? From which country are you joining us in this moment of reflection? Write it down and let us unite as a community that listens, waits, and walks under the guidance of Mary. We have walked together a path of words that are not only information, but an invitation. It is not simply the death of a man, even if he was a universal pastor. What we have witnessed is a prophetic sign, a crack in time, a wound that forces us to look at the sky with different eyes. Because when the shepherd leaves and the world trembles, it is time for the sheep to hear directly the voice of the Good Shepherd. Mary, as Mother of the Church, has not remained silent. She has prepared us for decades, tenderly but firmly, for this moment we are living in. He warned us about spiritual confusion. He told us about a great test. He asked us for conversion, prayer, fasting, and fidelity. And today, when many feel that the world is falling apart, their voice rises to tell us there is still hope. This is not the end. It's a new beginning. but it will only be true for those who open their hearts, for those who stop running after the ephemeral and surrender to the eternal, for those who understand that God's silence is not absence, but preparation. That pain is not punishment, but purification, and that death is not the end, but the door to true life. Today, more than ever, we need to get back to basics, return to the living gospel, to sincere prayer, to the Eucharist with reverence, to concrete charity, to faith without masks. Because days will come when it will not be enough to have believed, but to have lived what you believe. Days in which we will not be able to rely on the outside, but we will have to support ourselves internally by the grace that we have cultivated in secret. Francisco has fulfilled his mission. It is now our turn to continue ours. Heaven has not left us alone. Maria is with us, and if we walk with her, we will safely reach her Son. Thank you for being here, for having allowed you to stop the noise for a few minutes to listen to the murmur of the eternal. Don't let this message remain only in your ears. Take it to the heart. Live it. Share it. And if this word resonated in your soul, do not leave without answering its call. Subscribe to the channel to continue receiving these messages that feed faith. Share this video with someone who is lost, hurting, or needs to believe again. Write in the comments from which country you are joining us and who you want us to pray for this week. Together we are more than spectators. We are a family under the mantle of Mary. And now, let the silence continue speaking, but let him find you, awake, firm, praying, expecting, with eyes fixed on the sky, and the heart lit with faith.